Hi, my name is R-Blank, and I run SYB, and today I'm going to discuss how to talk about EMF with friends, relatives, and colleagues. And if you like these videos, please click to like and subscribe to this channel. You've done it. You've taken the steps to learn more about the health risks of EMF and how to protect yourself. And now you want to take the next step. You want to help those around you learn to start protecting themselves as well. That's what this video is for. In the decade that I've been involved in EMF, I've seen that the landscape has shifted. Awareness of EMF issues has grown a lot. But even as more people become more aware of the serious health risks posed by EMF, there aren't many resources to help people like you find productive ways to communicate these issues to others, your friends, your family, your colleagues. And that's what this video is for, to help you learn how to discuss EMF issues with the people you care about, so they can make changes to improve their health, and in many cases, yours as well. As you work towards improving your ability to communicate your concerns about EMF, it's always important to consider what your actual goals are. And your goals will depend on the context. Who are you talking to? When and where? What is your desired end result? Maybe you want to help your teenager learn some safer technology habits, like not keeping their phone in their pocket. Or maybe your friend saw you using your SYB phone pouch and asked what it is, and you want to explain without sounding alarmist or like you believe in fairy tales. Or maybe you want to talk about EMF radiation in your workplace with your boss or supervisor. These are just a few possible examples of what your goal might be in any given situation. The important part is for you to be aware of your goal. You should make it as specific as possible and formulate your approach to the interaction with your specific goal in mind. Your goal should also be achievable. Achievable means that your goal should be practical. For example, if your goal is, I want my son-in-law to stop using cell phones, it's very unlikely that you can achieve that. I won't say it's impossible, just unlikely. In contrast, it is much more likely that you can get him to stop carrying his phone in his pocket. That's just one example of an achievable goal. I don't want to dissuade you from taking on bigger goals. Instead, I want to try to help you have the highest chance of success, and the more achievable a goal you set for yourself, the more likely you will be to succeed. As you start down this process, remember that information and facts aren't all that matter. How you approach the topic, your manner and behavior, and how you treat the person you are talking to are all crucial elements. So here are a few pointers. First, it's important to realize that this topic isn't everyone's thing. You are not going to change everyone's mind. In order to have the most success, you need to recognize that and respect people's preferences. I strongly recommend that you focus on your concerns about EMF and health. It's important not to dilute your argument with other issues, regardless of how related you think they are. For example, some of the issues related to EMF that often find their way into discussions include privacy, technology addiction, and technology waste. But you will be more successful if you avoid throwing the kitchen sink into your discussions and instead focus on the health aspects that are the most concern to you. It's very important to focus on facts and science. You can include your own interpretation, but make clear when you do that, and distinguish your own views from the actual facts and the actual science. Always let the science and sound judgment lead the discussion. And remember, you're going to get better at this over time, and with practice. If this is your first time talking about EMF with others, you may well experience some challenges. So it's important that you set reasonable expectations for yourself and what you hope to achieve. And remember that you will get better at this, and it will become easier. For the best results, try to keep it personal as much as possible. Express your own personal journey, how you came to be aware, what prompted you to take action, and what are the actions that you are taking. And of course, make sure to listen. It is important to listen to the feedback you're getting. That feedback can help you craft even better points the next time you try to have this sort of discussion. You need to recognize tech addiction is real. It's not a metaphor, and it's a big influence on how people use all of these EMF-emitting gadgets in their lives. You can't get people to change addictive behaviors overnight, but you can plant the seeds for them to start making small changes. And finally, remember that you do not need to convince everyone. You really just want to move the ball forward. You want to make more people more aware, not all people fully aware. If you can get people to do one or two more things that make a difference, that's a win. So you have your goals, and you've thought about how you're going to approach the topic. The final step is to come armed with some facts. Now, I am very well aware that there is a ton of information that you could bring to your discussion. More information than any one person can memorize. So remember, the goal isn't to memorize everything, or even most of the information. And you definitely don't want to read your friends or relatives a big laundry list of facts. Instead, you want to have some points ready to ease into the topic. Now, I have a lot of this information already covered in blog posts, ebooks, and videos. So rather than try to fit all that into this video, I suggest that you check out this link, shieldyourbody.com/learn, to get immediate and free access to this information. You can choose the topics that you think are the most interesting and most convincing to use in your advocacy. When you have as many conversations about EMF as I do, you'll start to learn there are some objections that you'll hear repeated over and over again. So in the next few pages, I will include some of the most common objections I've heard and how I address them. Remember, you do not want to get into a fight with the person you're talking to, because that will just make them shut down and reject everything that you have to say. Instead, you want to engage in a process of education, calmly explaining the facts as you see them. And if you know some of the objections you're likely to hear, you can prepare your responses in advance. One that I hear often is that science says EMF is safe. To be fair, this is based on some truth. While there are many studies, literally thousands of them, showing negative health effects from EMF radiation, it is also true that there are scientific studies that show, for example, cell phone radiation does not lead to an increased rate of brain tumors. One way that I respond to this objection: first, I acknowledge the truth of that statement, that some science says this stuff isn't harmful. And then you can point out that the majority of studies that show cell phone radiation is safe are funded by the wireless and tech companies. They are designed, from the ground up, to produce specific results. This type of science is so faulty that, as just one example, 2 separate courts in Italy threw out these industry-funded studies when they ruled that cell phones cause brain tumors. They concluded the scientific studies funded by the wireless industry were too biased and too suspect to be included in their consideration of the verdict. Another objection that I hear is that there is no quote-unquote definitive proof. When you deal with EMF issues, you'll hear this phrase all the time. There's no definitive proof that EMF is harmful. While it sounds cut and dry, the term proof is actually a tricky one, and it has multiple meanings. In logic and math, for example, you can actually prove something. 1 + 1 = 2. That's a provable statement, definitively. But when you actually think about it, you'd be surprised at how few things in life can be definitively proven. For example, in a court of law, you don't seek definitive proof. Instead, you seek proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a different standard than definitive proof. And that's why we sentence people to prison without definitive proof. Just like there's no concept of definitive proof in law, neither is there in science. In science, proof means I've performed an experiment. Here are the results. You and others can attempt to repeat and verify the work. Here's my theory to explain the observations. What's more, scientific proof is often overturned by subsequent generations of scientists. This is how science grows and evolves, along with human understanding. But just because certain information does not constitute definitive proof, that does not mean the information is inaccurate, misleading, or unreliable. What's more, governments and regulators have repeatedly taken action in the absence of definitive proof, based on a preponderance of the evidence. In the United States, for example, the Endangered Species Act applies a standard of evidence that is less than scientific proof, in order for the Fish and Wildlife Service to designate a species as endangered. After all, once we have definitive proof that a species is extinct, it's too late to prevent extinction. So while there is no definitive proof that EMF causes brain tumors, there is very concerning, scientifically accepted, peer-reviewed evidence that cell phone radiation is carcinogenic. And this is why people should take action, even before we have definitive proof. People, all of us, want to believe that if something is available for sale, it's safe. After all, if something isn't safe, they wouldn't be allowed to sell it to us. Well, as we learn time and again, this just isn't true. In some cases, it's because the science hasn't caught up. We don't yet know something isn't safe. In some cases, it's because the regulations lag behind the science. And in other cases, it's because the regulations are not actually enforced. When it comes to EMF, we know that this type of radiation is dangerous, but the regulations lag behind the science, and the limited regulations that do exist are not enforced. And finally, we get to the core challenge that you will face. The natural response of many is to not want to hear any of this information, because people have such a deep and in many cases addictive relationship with their EMF emitting technology. And for these people, I have some good news. You don't actually have to give up your tech in order to make a big difference to your health. And that's why you need to come to your discussion ready to share some actionable tips. Remember, the whole reason you are watching this video is that you want to help other people make a difference in their health. So it's not enough to come to your conversation armed with facts about why they should take action. You also need to provide them with solutions, specific tips they can use to start living healthier. And all of these tips are based on what I call the 2 key rules of EMF protection. One is to minimize use. The best way to reduce your exposure to EMF radiation from wireless devices is to reduce your usage of wireless technology. This way, you're not exposed to radiation in the first place. And that's why, for example, I generally encourage people not to wear smartwatches, because your phone does almost everything a smartwatch does. So by skipping the smartwatch, you're using less tech and not giving up much, if any, benefit from modern technology. And the second rule is to maximize the distance between your body and the tech when it is in use, because the power of EMF diminishes exponentially with distance. Every millimeter makes a big difference. And that's why, for example, you shouldn't carry your phone in your pocket. These are just 2 simple examples of how small changes can have a big impact on your exposure without sacrificing your enjoyment and benefit from modern technology. And once you start thinking about these 2 rules, there are a lot of ways to achieve them without sacrificing your enjoyment of and benefit from modern technology. And I have a lot of these posted on my website, so rather than try to stuff all of them in this video, check out shieldyourbody.com/best to learn more. What's important is to go into your discussion armed with some alternatives. For example, if your goal is to get your husband to stop using a Bluetooth headset, explain to him what else he can do instead, like use speakerphone or a regular headset. Or if your goal is to have your neighbors remove Wi-Fi from their apartment, explain how Ethernet works and how they can get Ethernet adapters for all of their devices. Or if your goal is to get your wife to stop sleeping with a phone on her nightstand next to your bed, maybe suggest she start by at least turning the phone into airplane mode before she falls asleep. The point is, offer specific alternatives. Remember, the whole reason you are engaged in this process is that you want to help other people make a difference in their health. So it's not enough to come to your conversation armed with facts about why they should take action. You also need to provide them with solutions, specific tips they can start using to live healthier. It will be much easier to get someone to modify their behavior if you offer a specific suggestion, or even better, a few specific suggestions from which they can choose. When you're concerned about EMF, I understand just how overwhelming it can sometimes feel. After all, they keep making more and more wireless devices, not just new phones, but smart cars and smart meters and smartwatches and smart thermostats. And so many cell towers are going up every single day. But it's also important to remember that you are not helpless. It is true that you alone can't stop Apple from selling iPhones, and you alone cannot force Samsung to make safer phones. But you alone can make a big difference in your personal exposure based on how you engage with technology. And you alone can help make other people safer by educating them on these important issues. And that, in turn, will contribute to the larger goals of slowing, for example, the 5G rollout. Because the more people who think twice about upgrading their device or getting a new form of smart tech, the slower that stuff will roll out. The more people who tell realtors that they are concerned about EMF levels in homes, the more the market will learn that this is a priority, and the more motivated people will be to make their homes safer and oppose, for example, tower deployments in their neighborhoods. Even if they aren't personally concerned about EMF, everyone is concerned about their home value. The more people who are aware, the more people who start to take back control from EMF and the wireless companies. And the way to do that is to learn how to communicate these issues and concerns calmly and effectively. This is how it all starts. I encourage you to watch this video a couple of times. I covered a lot of ground. Some of the most important points are: 1. Define specific and achievable goals. 2. Remember to be polite and non-confrontational and listen and respond to their objections. 3. Focus on real science more than opinion and integrate your personal experience. And 4. Come armed with some facts and some actionable tips. It may take a little bit for you to get good at this process, but once you start trying, you're going to be amazed at the results that are possible and the change that you can make happen. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Your support is what makes the SYB mission possible, and this is how we start to make the world a safer place. For more information and resources, please visit us at shieldyourbody.com.